My name is Murtaza. I represent Cedar Consulting, and I think we have an interesting topic here. This is the reason why pretty much all of us are here, which is basically the customer and the experience that goes along with dealing with customers. We have a really interesting panel here today. So I'll start one by one by welcoming the panel. We have Vishal Govil from Bank Muscat, who's been having a nice long inning. He's been there 18 plus years, looking at technology, strategy, and everything that goes into digital experience there. We have Sulaiman from Bank Dhofar. He heads the customer experience unit, having spent years before in highly customer-centric organizations, Qatar Airways, NBO, etc. So welcome, Sulaiman. We have Srikantha. Sri is the CEO and co-founder of Yeti. He's been guiding and growing Yeti for the past 10 years. Before that, he's worked with Aon Hewitt, KPMG, and Oracle Financial Services, which is where our final panelist comes from. Nadim Madi. He's the director of solution consulting. Nadim, besides Oracle, has also spent time at Temenos, Path Solutions, and has been a banker before. Welcome, gentlemen. So since we are talking about customers, and I'll start with you, Vishal. While designing the customer experience and journeys, are there any key factors or key principles that you all consider or you all try to stick to, considering you're all a large, big player in the, not only in the market, but also in the region, in Oman?
Yeah, thank you, Cedar, for organizing this program, and thank you, Ram, for inviting me. I don't know whether you observed it or not, but I have been listening to all the panels since morning, and you have kept this as a third session. I think it was for a purpose. But if I count number of time customer has appeared in all the panel discussion, and I count in terms of customer experience being talked about since the morning, whether Tariq calling it customer at the center, or Salman talking about customer experience, or talking about creating additional customer experience, and I think my friend Khalid nailed it by giving his son's example, which is the experience, since I've seen that boy from the childhood. So
I was hoping they'd not steal too much of our thunder, but let's.
But the reason I'm saying this is that itself reflect the why, though banking is a traditional, we think of we are bankers and it is about products and services. But a lot has changed in banking where the customer is at the heart of everything. And that nailed that concept down. And before I go there, I also wanted to reflect. I remember when in my childhood, I used to go with my father to the bank. I'm talking about State Bank of India. And most people from India can reflect that State Bank of India at that time in 80s. It was even worse than going to a government office. But if I see the experience I get now when I go back to India, where banker is at my home rather than I'm standing in front of the banker. So that the concept of customer has completely transitioned, and banking is more like a service industry more than products. So I believe banks should learn from hospitality. So that's part. But coming back to the question in terms of the key factors in designing the customer journey, I would summarize it as to remember easily is PACI, is PACI. So to remember the 4 factors. The P stands for personalization. It has to be a proactive personalization for customer experience. I will come to A later, but I want to talk about C first, which is contextualization. So the customer journey, when we are designing, we need to make sure that the content that customer sees in the digital channel or a phygital channel is contextualized to that customer. Then, of course, A stands for automation. That automation is required. And last, I in Pachi is the innovation. And we spoke about that in the second session. So innovation is the key to design the journey. So I think these are the 4 key factors and which goes into designing.
So is that kind of kept at the back of the mind while...
Absolutely. These four factors, it's not, I would not say not just back of the mind. I think these are the four. If we are designing a customer journey,
Okay.
we need to think about these four things in designing a customer journey. It's not just about a digital product or a software. I think in the second last panel we spoke about while designing or any service, we need to first think about customer and its experience. Then comes the system, in my view.
Excellent, Vishal. The first panel gave us, I think, spoke about Gandalf.
Yes.
Rizwan in the last panel gave us something to remember by. Now we have Vishal giving us Pachi to remember by. So there is some takeaway every panel. Thank you, Vishal.
Now the Twitter is added.
Sulaiman, so you've been involved in looking at the customers, whether and the good part or the challenging part is while providing service, you have to provide, you're looking at Gen Z, Gen Y, and probably somewhere where I come from, Gen X. Everyone's looking at the same service that you provide at the end of the day, your app, your processes, and so on and so forth. So how do you measure the success of the customer experience, or how do you look at this has been successful or not, or an ROI, or how do you measure and want to take back to your management saying that this has been something which has worked or not worked or so?
Thank you, Chetan and Siddharth, for having me here. It's a great session so far. I think data plays an important role when it comes to customer experience. So if we are talking to the conventional method of measuring, then we focus a lot on the primary research of doing mystery shoppers, of doing CSAT, etc. Now, equally important is the secondary method, which is to actually analyze your data, which confirms or denies whatever the primary research says. So if I put it into context, I'll say, customers are dissatisfied. What are the drivers and the factors within your processes, within your service delivery, which you can measure through secondary research, looking at your turnaround time, looking at your error rates, your rework if you're doing loans, and that will confirm or deny whether the customers are satisfied or not. So I think if you're able to combine between the two methods, which is the primary and the secondary being primarily driven by data and the interaction that the customer has with your channels, with your products, with your services, social media, etc., then you're able to form an opinion on whether the services that you're delivering are, being good or not. So that's, from my perspective, or the way I see it, that's how you measure. Because the metrics behind customer experience will all end with satisfaction, customer effort score, the service that's been delivered in your branches if you're looking from a mystery shopper perspective. But we tend to ignore the actual process and your service delivery. So what are you doing in terms of rework? What are you doing in terms of turnaround time? Is your first time ride rate extremely high? So when you're able to combine these, then you can add value, or you can actually start measuring or looking at measuring the ROI, because obviously you're seeing what you're delivering, what the perception is, which in turn has an impact on whether the customer remains in your bank or taking your service, or he moves out. So these being able to combine, you're able to measure the ROI to a certain degree. You have to remember CX or customer experience, it's an intangible. So it's important for you to make it tangible as much as possible. And the best way in doing that is to combine the perception as well as the interaction metrics or the process metrics. So that's.
And I assume this is shared shared with the businesses on a regular basis so that you keep monitoring the various
Definitely,
viewpoints.
because accountability of CX should not be primarily a CX function. But to build accountability, you need to show impact. You need to show how your churn rates or your acquisition is impacted by the experience that you're actually delivering. So accountability can only be built if there's awareness and people actually know So it's, we do share, or, it's always a practice for you to actually share the performance, to build that collaboration with the businesses to see how they're impacting the experience.
Sure. Thank you so much, Sulaiman. Nadim, coming to you, and where Oracle comes from. I mean, most customer experience journeys and processes start from the onboarding process, right? And there has been huge amount of changes through API linkages at the back end and changes in processes where this has been impacted the most. So from your point of view, what have you seen in the onboarding journeys as they've progressed, and what are you seeing now coming up in the next few years that will impact customer experience?
Right. Thanks, Murtaza. So I think what defines really a great customer journey are the many things that happen before, during, and after the experience. As Oracle, we see this as a never-ending cycle that keeps repeating, right? And it starts from the need or the intent of the customer to acquire a product or a service while he's browsing or searching the internet to, for example, he wants to buy a car or get a loan or whatever. And then he gets this targeted engagement from the bank, like, hey, Mr. Customer, we know that you're looking for a car, and being your trusted bank, we suggest you get a car loan from us. So this is the kind of initiation that gets this customer to download the mobile app and starts the onboarding journey. And this is really a direct type of engagement. On a different front, we see as well like the indirect side of it, where you're browsing your Instagram, for example, and then you get to see an ad from a bank that, hey, Mr. Customer, download our app and transfer some funds to open an account and transfer some funds, and you will get a term deposit for 4%, for example. And this is, again, what triggers the customer to start this journey and download the app and initiate this experience. Now we get to the second stage, which is the experience itself. And this is really where we see a lot of investment in the customer experience, where we see the focus on a mobile-first approach, a minimum number of clicks, a seamless experience, maximum convenience that banks want to provide to their customers. And this is still an evolving journey, right? So even as of today, we see that every year some changes are made to make this journey more seamless. And still we see, for example, things that are like a customer requesting a checkbook, which is not really applicable in today's world, or even a digital signature that can be forged while we have like face recognition or fingerprints. So this is an evolving journey that will keep evolving until we get to see a really seamless and frictionless experience. But this is not where the journey ends, right? So once this application is submitted by the customer, all these information will flow to the bank side, right? And as a bank, you might have the most exciting experience. If you fail to turn around this application in a record time, this customer won't be interested anymore. So the last mile of this journey would be servicing this application in a record time. And this is where we have all type of workflows and mechanisms to eliminate the labor, right, and automate as much as possible. We keep hearing like turnaround time is 3 days or 2 days, while it should be like a couple of minutes, right? I mean, if it's a happy flow, there is no need to assess this application. So we have machines that do this. Based on the profile of the customer, we can immediately get the assessment, the KYC is done, the scoring is we can get from the credit bureau, and then we can proceed with this application. And this is where it ends. And now how we really materialize the success of the journey is we see banks pushing the customers to share the feedback over social media, right? This is where they get the visibility and where we really materialize the success of this journey, because everyone wants to review and want to get to see other people, let's say, experience with this banks or the other bank. So this is really how it's a loop, because there will be another need, another intent, etc., that will trigger another.
It's a continuous process. Get the customer
Exactly.
onto the journey and then see it through right till the end.
Absolutely.
Right? Absolutely. Excellent. Thank you so much, Nadim. Sri, coming to you. Obviously, the idea here is to provide banking customer seamless experience, right? So what, according to you, are the key factors for providing that kind of seamless experience to take him through once he's on board? As he said, once you've attracted him, what will wow the customer through the process? Key factors. Just need to diagram.
Thanks. Yeah. Thanks for having me. So, drawing on all the panels that I've heard in the morning and my own personal experience, customers today are looking at control, predictable timelines for outcomes. As in, that's essentially what drives whether I like a journey or I don't like a journey which I've been through. To give you personal examples, I recently opened an account in my personal name and my company's name in UAE, and it was completely different. The personal journey was perfect, smooth, 3 days, everything worked out. The corporate journey, the application didn't go through. It took about a month for the bank to respond. And I've not signed up with them because I pulled out of the journey personally saying this is not working. And that defines, I think, the difference in the execution excellence that we have to achieve, because it's beyond the technology. It's no longer about saying, does my technology allow me to do 3-4 things? Because technology might be able to allow you, but there are all those other processes in the back end which also need to get streamlined.
Processes, and even you look at architecture or at the back end?
Yeah, so one part when we talk about is architecture, is the processes. The other part which we talked about was in terms of, mobile applications or how customers are accessing. We seriously have to look at what's the customer experience, not today, but 3, 4, 5 years down the line, because we're making architectural decisions today which may have impact 2 or 3 years down the line. We have seen customers where mobile adoption was great in year 1, but architecturally the entire process slows down because you've put roadblocks or you have inefficient processes in the back office which impact the edge systems, where customers are taking a minute or 30 seconds for data refreshes to happen. These are decisions which you wouldn't know when you're taking those decisions. So anything you put into technology, you will have to look at it from a long-term perspective and say, how does this impact customer journeys going forward? If I touch volumes,
as Maya was earlier referring to as purposeless, don't have really narrow end goal in mind. Absolutely. Vishal, coming to you, how does the bank look at the actual customer or consumer input and trends and feedback while developing the customer experience journeys? And how do you apply whatever customer is telling you,
That's quite relevant. So as it rightly put, customer journey is about pre-sales and then post-sales. And I'll add post-sales, once customer buy, what happens after that, which there is a feedback and there is a way to reach out to the customer and to act on the feedback. That's very important. Taking feedback is one thing, creating metrics is one thing, but doing something about it is important. And real customer engagement comes when you do something about it. So in terms of looking at that, what we do, and the second point is I want to bring is customer journey design needs to have 2 aspects. Customer thinks from head, but act from heart. Okay. So while designing a journey, if we only think of head, then we will lose out on very important part, which is heart. And it's the heart where the feedback, the experience, emotions come in, and most often customer act on emotions, not on head. So these are the 2 very important aspects to take into the customer design. Coming to the question with respect to data, yes, data is important both from the pre-sales and post-sales perspective. And this is a closed loop that has to be taken. Creation of a journey is not a one-time affair. It is a continuous process, and your question is very relevant because as the journey starts and you are reaching and you are collecting the information as to how the customer is responding, that is where feedback loop has to come in at the back. So the contextualization part that I said, and in the innovation part I said, this is where the data plays important role as a feedback loop, and it has to come in. So we do collect data. We have different ways to collect the data, through surveys, through feedback, through focus groups, where the customer data has been into customer engagement via our own RMs and all that. And that goes back into the designing of the cycle and refining the cycle once again. So it's a continuous process.
Okay. Thanks, Amira. Thanks, Vishal. It's always a challenge actually to kind of keep incorporating the customer feedback into the front-end processes, because it's, as you said, there is no endpoint. It's a continuous process. There is no you don't have to reach a destination. You are continuously challenging yourself. So Sulaiman, where the needs of the customer and this process is continuously changing, how are you adapting the processes so that there is always change in this process? You getting feedback, like Vishal said, you're putting it up front. Again, the process changes. Working with business, working with process automation. There are various touch points that you work with. So realistically, I mean, what do you look at, or how do you manage the entire change management process to ensure the end of the day, the feedback that you get from the customer is incorporated and there is an improvement that you're seeing as an upward curve,
Thank you. I think obviously we've been speaking about customer journeys, and when I'll go a bit technical in terms of how you define the customer journey. The first and foremost, you need to define your personas or your archetypes, which form the base of the experience that you wish to design, right? So as behaviors change, needs change, frustrations change depending on the different demographics, depending on the lifestyle changes. So as those change, then the governing documents that you have, or the tools that you have in defining the experience, those also need to be changed. So you change the persona. From our perspective, you have to obviously alter the persona to reflect the changes that have happened with your archetypes, and change the journey or enhance the journey. I won't say change, enhance the journey, and then implement. But it's important to understand that when it comes to journey design, that we all appreciate that the journey mapping, it's the process, not the content. So ultimately, extracting all these opportunities or the moments of truth or the enhancements that you're able to achieve from designing, applying the design thinking methodologies of finding leverage areas and improving experience, and then being able to implement is. And it's interesting, the entire panel is speaking about, agility, speaking about, the new age banking in terms of, speed to market. So it would for us CX practitioners, this is all, music to our ears, because we'll be able to be very agile in terms of how do we change experiences. So once we are able to detect a change, then we will be able to change our processes, the systems, and it will be much easier to change if it's more of a digital experience as opposed to changing branches or any other physical experience elements. So I would say it's always important to understand that these tools is just the process, and the content is actually the experience or the changes you do on the systems, on the channels, or in the physical experience, the behaviors of the staff, which all is equally important.
Various touch points.
The various touch points,
yes.
yes.
Absolutely, Sulaiman. Nadim, even in the previous two panels, there was a lot of discussion on digital journeys and corporate and SME. While when we speak digital, the first attention goes to is the normal individual retail customers. But obviously there has been a lot of work, because corporate is a relatively longer more difficult, more evaluative process, right? In terms of credit, in terms of risk, it's more scrutinized. So in terms of these corporate SME journeys and how customer experience comes in, from an Oracle point of view, how do you see that getting incorporated to improve CX on these journeys?
Right. Thanks, Murtaza. So you're completely right. I think banks invested heavily during the last, let's say, couple of years to enhance the retail journeys, right? And currently we're seeing a lot of traction when it comes to corporate. And here the concept is the same. We see banks want to enable corporates to become more self-service, right? Corporates have the right to do everything themselves without having to depend much on the RM, on the bank, etc. And so what we're seeing now is all these experiences that are made available for corporates, be it from cash management perspective, but even beyond, like going to trade finance, going to supply chain financing, and even transaction banking. So now we see banks want to adopt, and especially in the market, even in Oman, we are in discussions with a lot of banks where we are helping them or enabling them on these latest trends in the market to provide their corporates with more self-service tools. For example, a CFO from a multinational company would want to connect to the system, to the online portal, and he would like to see the liquidity of different, let's say, subsidiaries across the globe. He would be able to see as well all sort of cash flow and cash flow projections, and he will be able to make better, better decisions based on these data. So this is the kind of, let's say, traction and trends we're currently seeing in the market. Thank you.
And Oracle being Oracle, since you have customers across the globe,
Absolutely.
and partnerships and customers and feedback coming across, is this all incorporated so that when you're dealing with customers in Oman and Middle East,
Absolutely.
you have the best practices already put in?
Absolutely. So,
or they are obviously, or you're trying to cater to the requirements of the region?
no, you're totally right, Murtaza. So there are a lot of learnings from different markets, and what we do is we usually try to embed these learnings within the solution, and this is where the consulting part happens, right? This is where we try to help customers in the Middle East with our previous experience, with our previous learnings from different markets, and there are learnings even from the Middle East that we try to adopt in different markets. So there are learnings that are shared across the globe, and we're not only enabling our customers with solutions, but even with consultancy and advisory. Thank you.
Thanks, Nadim. Sri, even in the last couple of panels, we've heard a lot about fintechs being partners, bank partners, working together, so on and so forth. So in a CX journey, how do you see collaboration between banks and fintechs play a part in terms of trying to build on it and improve the entire experience for customers?
I think banks have a tough task because they cater to a fairly wide breadth of customer segments. And what fintechs are doing is essentially taking a very small sliver and customizing to address that market. And that we're seeing in India today play out in such a large amount. You have fintechs who are very, very specialized, and it's very difficult for a broad spectrum provider like a bank to compete with all of these. So the only mechanism remaining is that you collaborate and participate in the business which is happening. So there is a risk mitigation, there is a customer journey, there's a customer experience that the fintechs are bringing. And it's not uncommon for a bank in India today to have partnerships with 45 or 50 different origination providers. Hyper local, hyper specific. So, what you're doing over there is recognizing the market realities and participating in where you have strengths. You have strengths in ability to hold risk onto your books. You may not have strengths to hyper specifically target a small customer segment, which is what the fintechs are doing. So in terms of onboarding and in terms of building customer journeys which allow multiple fintech partners to come in. I think that's what most people are concentrating on, is building internal infrastructure, as Malia said, in terms of purposeless. So you don't know who the fintech is going to be, you don't know what they're going to ask, you don't know at what stage in the journey they're going to come. But you just be aware that there are going to be a lot of specialized providers who want to come in and support you, grow your business, and they want a slice of the pie. And as banks, the job is how do we provide the infrastructure to onboard all of these partners.
So, Sri, having done a lot of work in the QA space and you'd get involved in almost every touch point, which particular areas you see this happening the most in terms of, is it payments, is it card? I mean, which particular area you see these kind of partnerships come through most successfully? Let's put it that way.
Right. Payments has been something which has been a lot of innovation which is happening, but of late what we are seeing is more of specialized customer onboarding kind of pieces. So a car loan gets originated in a different manner, a farm loan gets originated in a different manner, a forex requirement, a forex international payment requirement gets originated in a very different manner, very different customer segment. So that's where payments is something that will establish the bedrock. But the growth will all come from origination is my view.
And any views in terms of the compliance part and having to also, obviously, while the businesses want to make it as seamless and as quick as possible, there is an angle to the bank which is compliance, audit, risk, CISO related, security related. How do you see that fitting in? Because you come in from the QA angle. You see all the parties playing a role, right?
And we see most of the negative stuff happening, sadly. So a lot of all the challenges that going over the hump before you see the green fields. So yeah. As Bhanu said, that you have to participate, things are very complex, multi-channel interaction with customers. Risk can arise at different stages. So it is always helpful to bring the risk team along. It's always helpful to build platforms which are risk aware, which are risk friendly, which have security built in. US just pushed out a regulation which says security can't be the prerogative of the consumer, it has to be the prerogative of the tech product owner, which I think conceptually will also extend as we move forward. And if you're a bank and you are a tech user or a tech provider, security and risk becomes a part of what you have to deal with and provide.
So, Vishal was coming to you that how much of the hair reduction comes from the compliance side of the business,
I mean, without demonizing compliance and risk, I think we need to take them in the journey like what we practice is on from the beginning. And as a bank, as said in the previous panel, that is an area we cannot avoid. We call it devil you need to live with. So if we take them along from the beginning, I think that will complement the journey, definitely. So yes, those can be a challenges in moving forward, but regulatory framework also plays a role.
Yes, of course.
But then I think the key is not to keep them at the end.
Yeah.
Have them in the beginning.
Be part of the team.
Be part of the team, be partner on that. I want to also little bit complement his point when you ask a question, where do you see fintech collaborating in ECX journey? Another area I see is extending the customer journey beyond the bank, as we talk about creating new containers. So if you go beyond banking service and create a journey more lifestyle based, where the concept of marketplace is coming. That is another area where a lot fintech collaboration can happen, because not many of those services are core banking services. And that's where fintechs come and play the role. So that's another area of big collaboration in opportunity for banks.
Where they specialize and you can look, I have many questions to ask, but I'd rather give some opportunity to the audience if anyone wants to pick on any one of these.
Sorry, it's me, Pani, again. I'm not paid for asking questions, but I'm getting one. So, I mean, it is two discussions last centered around customer experience, and several examples that have come in saying these kids know much better than us, but we end up designing which when we know that they know better. So is it, I mean, anyone can answer, is it something like what even Apple did, I believe, that they have stopped listening to engineers and started listening to psychologists to understand the human aspect of it and on how you design a product. Similarly, is it time for us to start listening to kids before we present anything into the market? Just a thought on how your reactions.
Sulaiman, from a customer experience, Gen Z experience.
I mean, that's an interesting point. You know, being from customer experience, you're told from the beginning that you need to listen to customers. You need to listen to customers. Now, those customers obviously will be adults, people who who are bankable, working, or the different segments that you're targeting. So I do agree. It's now time that we actually do go down a level and start listening to kids to see what their preferences are, and then being able to customize from, or at least if you're not going to offer now, then at least you are preparing for the type of psych that these kids will grow up, because you would understand where they're coming from. So I think that's an interesting point, and I do agree. In which way are we going to listen to kids? Because kids can be annoying, but we have to listen to kids.
I want to compliment him by saying, as long as after listening, you're not crucified on social media.
My question is to Sulaiman and Vishal. From a customer experience perspective, which is more difficult to design, when we reach out to the customer or when the customer reaches out to us? From the customer experience, which is more difficult?
What do you mean exactly? In terms of what, engagement, or in terms of providing the services?
Both. So you would be engaging with the customer to provide them services. So when we reach out to the customer, it's from an onboarding perspective. And when the customer reaches out to us, it's for a specific service that they have.
No,
It's more difficult to...
I think reaching out to customers, it depends on the products, or it depends on the services. But again, if you've defined your persona, which is based on excessive amount of data of understanding the behavior, then either one could be easy. So part of the elements when you're designing a persona is the preference in terms of the interaction, or in terms of what they prefer in reaching them out, in reaching out to them, or them interacting with you. So it all comes down to your tools that you've used and how much data you've used in defining the persona. So if the persona is as accurate as possible of your target segments, of all your target customers, then there shouldn't be a challenge either way. Okay.
Yep. So I was going through reading the 2023 Consumer Index Survey. Interestingly, there was one graph which shows that though we are digitizing, there are still certain areas where customer wants to talk to a human. And very categorically it come out, you cannot digitize everything. You still have an element of human interaction. And I think, as you rightly said, while designing the journey, and when the journey is super personalized from a persona, you need to think of what are the touch points where you have to reach out to the customer and vice versa. So it's hard to make a choice which is better, in my view. It has to be a balance.
Banker's response, as they say. Anyway, you can always catch these four gentlemen over lunch. I think we are running a few minutes behind, and Vin is throwing all kind of hand gestures at me. So without much ado, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Gentlemen. Thank you.